Greeting to all. Today we will discuss about micro teaching in detailed manner. So in micro teaching, the research is still continuing all over the world on the subject, especially in Britain, the United States and India. So these researches have shown that once teachers are made aware of the component skills that contribute to successful teaching, considerable improvement can be made to upgrade their performance. Micro teaching is the result of this behavioral modification process. Micro teaching refines the teaching skills like questioning, explaining, illustrating, lecturing, etc. So here let us learn in this lesson, in this class, how each skill can be mastered separately and finally achieve mastery in the skill of teaching. So here let us first discuss what is a micro teaching. Micro teaching as a teaching skill is already in operation in many professions, many defense establishments and technical training institutions make extensive use of it. It is now adopted very widely in teacher training programs. It was first introduced at Stanford University in 1960 by Allen and others. Since its introduction, there has been a very dramatic growth in the use of micro teaching. Teaching is a very complex activity, and practicing teaching in normal classroom situation is not very easy. Therefore, micro teaching aims to reduce the complexity of the practice teaching situation. The complex sub skills of teaching are broken into simpler component skills for this purpose. Already, as you know, that teaching is a very complex activity and a complex area. So therefore, in a real classroom, as a trainee teacher, if you wants to do a practice, then it is not easy for a trainee students. So that's why micro teaching aim is to reduce the complexities, means that difficult areas, for the purpose of practice teaching situation. Because of that reason only, in place of a real classroom, so in micro teaching we are going to take a real classroom where there is no real. So that's why for a trainee students it is easy for to do the practice of each and every skill in a separate manner. Next, let us learn about the definitions of micro teaching. The most popular definition of micro teaching is that it is a scaled down encounter. Why it is going to be called as a scaled down means that less number of students, and time is also we are going to take less, and at the same time the content, the matter which we are going to take, so that is also going to be reduced. So that's why this micro teaching is called as scale down encounter. So in that, the teaching situation is simplified, the teacher's task is facilitated and made very specific, the length of the lesson is shortened, the size of the class is reduced. In other words, it analyzes the complex task of teaching into limited but well defined components that can be defined, observed, practiced, and evaluated and controlled. It emphasizes on small steps, giving quick and regular reinforcement. Micro teaching is thus a training technique. It is called micro because the teacher practices a simple concept, concentrates on a single skill in a small class. So, in a micro teaching, in each and every skill, trainee student is going to get quick and regular reinforcement. Means that reinforcement is nothing but motivation, because peer group is going to give a feedback, lecturer means that supervisor is going to give a feedback. Because of that reason, so in immediate situation that a trainee student is going to get reinforcement from the supervisor and also peer group. So that's why this micro teaching is very useful to get the practice of teaching in effective manner. Why means you are not going to get the practice of all skills in integrated manner. You are going to do the practice of each and every skill in a separate manner. When you do the practice of micro teaching skill in a separate manner, you know how to use that micro teaching skill in a real classroom in effective manner. So here Iris Paintall has given uh, has given some analysis about what are the teaching skills and what are the teaching behavior. Means that how many teaching skills, teaching behaviors are there in teaching skill. So here first one, writing instructional objectives, introducing a lesson, stimulus variation, reinforcement, silence and nonverbal clues, probing questions, explaining, illustrations with examples, using a blackboard, using audio visual aids, closure, lecturing, classroom management and organization. These all are the teaching skills or a teaching behavior. So when you do the practice of each and every skill from this area, then you are going to become a great teacher. Means that you are going to be a role model to all the students and also all the teachers. So number of teaching skills, number of teaching behaviors are there. So if you do the practice of each and every skill in a separate manner, then you are going to teach in effective manner. So whatever skills are there, according to Iris Paintal, we need to the practice of each and every skill in a separate manner. Now let us discuss need for micro teaching. What is the need for micro teaching in teaching profession? Teaching and training the teachers have been received a lot of attention these days. Lot of research has been carried out in this field. These researchers have made teaching profession more scientific and systematic. Hence the teacher is expected to be highly competitive and efficient. In micro teaching, each skill is mastered individually and thoroughly. It doesn't allow the teacher to be left in confusion, therefore it is needed. So here when you do the practice of the micro teaching, so teaching profession is going to be more scientific and systematic. So when you are going to teach inside the classroom, in a real classroom, in a scientific manner, in a systematic manner, then students are going to understand the concept in effective manner. So for the purpose of scientific teaching, for the purpose of systematic teaching, there is need to take the support of micro teaching. Why means? Because in micro teaching you are going to master the one skill in an individual manner, and you are not going to get confusion when you are going to teach in a real classroom, because already you know how to teach inside the classroom by the practice of all skills in a separate manner, in an individual manner and also in thorough manner. Many studies have indicated that micro teaching is effective in producing improvement in teaching performance. Improvement of teaching performance is going to depends upon the practice of the each and every skill in separate manner. So when you do the practice of each and every skill in separate manner, then 100% you are going to get improvement in your teaching performance. So this is so because micro teaching includes discriminative learning of the teaching skills through identifying the skills in action, analyzing their components and evaluating their effectiveness in use. In this way, the teacher student learns to discriminate between the appropriate and the inappropriate. Thus, the training phase provides the trainees with skill analysis, skill discrimination, skill practice, and focused feedback session. Therefore, it provides very good clarification on the nature and practice of the skill. So here, as a student teacher, you are going to discriminate which skill is good and which skill is not good, which skill is useful and which skill is not useful. So that's why in training phase, the trainees are going to do the skill analysis, skill discrimination, and also skill practice, and trainee students are going to focus on the feedback session, because in micro teaching skill, feedback session is going to play an important role. Why means feedback session will helps you to improve your teaching performance by concentrating on particular skill. Why means you are going to get feedback from your peer group, feedback from supervisor, feedback from self appraisal devices. Self appraisal devices means the devices which we are going to use in micro teaching classroom for the purpose of taking video recording or recording of the class. So here the aim of micro teaching training is to improve communicative ability, which makes it applicable to a wide range of situations and professional skills. So here the main concentration of micro teaching training is to developing or improving communicative ability, because in teaching learning process, what is going to play an important role? Communication between teacher and students is going to play an important role. For that purpose, there is need to take the support of micro teaching skill. So when you do the micro teaching skill training in a separate manner, in an individual manner, then that training is very useful for the purpose of getting communicative ability, which is useful in teaching learning process. So here in the process of practicing the skill, it enables the teachers to adopt various desired and generalized patterns of teaching behaviors, which are quite useful to him or to her in his or general teaching, even at a later stage. Means that, so in the process of practicing each and every skill, so whatever teaching behaviors are there, so there is need to apply each and every teaching behavior in the classroom. So when you apply each and every teaching behavior in the classroom, then you are going to understand, you are going to assess, you are going to evaluate which teaching behavior is suitable to the classroom depending upon the concept. Next, we will discuss planning and organization of micro teaching. So, how we are going to plan, how we are going to organize micro teaching in our institution. So, here we have learned how and why micro teaching skills are to be taught. Let us now learn how the micro teaching program is to be planned and organized. Micro teaching lessons are planned and organized in small steps, giving a feedback, regular reinforcement with controlled practice. First, the teacher is oriented towards the teaching skill he or she is to practice. Then he or she then given some time for preparation and then asked to teach the micro lesson. So the lesson is discussed and suggestions are given. The teacher attempts to teach the skill, again modifying our presentation in the light of the suggestions received. In micro teaching, if you want to do the practice of one micro teaching skill in a separate manner, certain steps are going to play an important role. So in that, first student teacher is going to select a small minute concept. Next, for the purpose of teaching only 5 to 10 minutes, then is going to prepare period plan or for a lesson plan depending upon the concept which is selected by him or her. After preparing a lesson plan or a period plan, then is going to prepare in front of the mirror or in their at their home. They are going to prepare how to teach in a real classroom. Then that trainee student is going to enter into the classroom. So when student teacher is going to enter into the classroom with teaching learning material, that student is going to enter into the classroom for the purpose of teaching one micro teaching skill in an individual manner for 5 to uh, 10 minutes or for 6 minutes and for 5 to 10 students. After teaching in a real classroom, then that student is going to get feedback, reinforcement from supervisor and also from the observers. Observers means peer group. After getting feedback from supervisor and observer, again that trainee student is going to replan the lesson, then is going to reteach that lesson, then again is going to get feedback from the supervisor, means that lecturer, and also from the peer group, means that observers. After getting feedback and suggestion reinforcement, then is going to teach. So this micro teaching skill practice is going to take place in cyclic manner till the attainment of that skill in a perfect manner. So that's why micro teaching is going to take place in a cyclic manner. So that's why in a micro teaching one cycle is there, so that cycle is called as micro teaching cycle. So here in 1980, Irish Paintall has suggested steps for micro lesson practice. In that, first one, the teacher teaches a short lesson of about 5 to 10 minutes duration for a small group of 5 to 10 students. Short lesson will be there. What is the time? Only 5 to 10 minutes duration, and number of students are going to be decreased, means that only 5 to 10 students will be there. Next, second one, he or she concentrates on practicing one specific skill in a small unit of content. So here trainee student is going to concentrate only on one specific skill, and by concentrating on a small content or unit. Okay, next third one, immediately after teaching, that trainee student receives feedback or a critic of her lesson from the supervisor and peers or from self appraisal devices. After teaching in a real classroom, trainee student is going to get feedback or a criticism on his lesson from the supervisor, means that lecturer. Peer group means that trainee students, friends, observers. Next one is what? Self appraisal devices, means that mobile phone, tape recorder, whatever you are going to use, by using that device also you are going to get feedback or suggestion. Next, fourth one, that trainee student replans her lesson in the light of the suggestions received and then reteaches her lesson to a different group of students or peers. After getting a feedback, after getting a suggestions from supervisor, peer group, and also self appraisal devices, again that trainee student is going to replan his or her lesson by concentrating on suggestions and feedback. Then he or she is going to reteach that lesson in a same classroom. Next, she again, after reteaching inside the classroom, she again receives feedbacks and resumes the cycle of the teaching. So here, feedback and reteach till the supervising peer group is satisfied with our performance. So here in micro teaching, whatever steps are given, so these steps are going to take place in a cyclic manner. So that's why this cycle is going to be called as a micro teaching cycle. So the whole micro teaching cycle takes 36 minutes for practice. So these 36 minutes are going to divide into different areas. So now I will explain how these 36 minutes are going to divide for each and every area in practice of one micro teaching skill. Means that for the practice of one micro teaching skill, you are going to take 36 minutes. So in that, for teaching 6 minutes, next for feedback 6 minutes, for replan or for plan 6 minutes, for reteach 6 minutes, and for refeedback 6 minutes. Totally how many minutes you are going to use? 36 minutes. So this is called as micro teaching cycle. Next here in micro teaching, now let us discuss preparation for a teaching. How we are going to do the preparation for a teaching. While planning a lesson, a teacher should state the objectives, means that academic standards, and plan different steps to achieve different objectives. He or she should also evaluate our performance to check whether he or she has achieved her objectives. Hence, a thorough preparation for the teaching situation is required before a teaching. A thorough preparation includes knowing the students, the subject, and also how to teach the subject to the students. So here, for the purpose of preparation of teaching, some steps are going to play an important role. In that, he or she must have the knowledge of what her students know about the topic that is in question. Next, second one, she must plan the lesson according to the age, experience, and background of the students. Next, third one, she must think in terms of the students' interests and plan her lesson, maybe motivation or explanation or use of audio visual aids, etc. is to be needed. Means that to create interest among the students, as a trainee teacher, you are going to take the support of audio visual aids for the purpose of motivation. And here, she or she must master the subject before she attempts to teach. For the purpose of teaching 5 to 6 minutes, here as a trainee teacher, you need to get the complete subject of that concept. Without having complete understanding of that concept, you may not able to teach effectively in the inside the classroom. So that's why you need to master of the subject matter what you have selected for the purpose of teaching inside the classroom. Next, she must rehearse her lesson and either evaluate herself or ask her friends to give advice. Before going to teach inside the classroom, there is need to do the rehearsal of your classroom. When you do the rehearsal of your classroom in front of the mirror or in front of your friends or in front of your parents if they are educated, there you are going to get feedback either from your parents or from your peer group or with yourself only. By using a mirror only, you are going to understand what mistakes you are doing while you are teaching in the classroom. So that's why in practice of each and every skill, rehearsal is going to take place. Rehearsal is going to play an important role. Why? Means rehearsal helps you to evaluate yourself. Next, she should concisely avoid any undesirable mannerisms. Undesirable mannerism means sometimes some trainee students are going to use some mannerisms. So don't use mannerisms inside the classroom. Try to avoid mannerism inside the classroom because mannerism gives negative waves to the students. So that's why my suggestion is to avoid undesirable mannerisms. just like hero, just like heroine, just like political leader. If you are going to use a mannerism inside the classroom, that is not good sign of teaching a practice. Next, let us discuss about flexibility of micro teaching. One of the interesting aspect of micro teaching is its adaptability to suit different needs of the teacher training. Variation at all steps have been experimented thoroughly. In some programs, the reteach may take place very soon after the teach, or it may be day or week later. In some programs, the reteach is dropped when the trainees are able to grasp the right idea. Okay, next we will discuss about integration of skills. Means that whatever skills you are going to do the practice in a separate manner, here we need to know how to integration of all these skills in a real classroom. Micro teaching divides the teaching behavior into different skills and gives training to the teacher in the use of specific skills. After training, the question is how to integrate the practiced skills so that the teacher will use them situationally. When the skills are practiced comprehensively for continued periods, integration takes place and the teacher gradually gains experience to use these skills intuitively. Yet, some educationists feel that a deliberate program for the integration of the teaching skills has to be provided. Several patterns of combining these skills have been suggested. One pattern refers to black building, where integration of the lesson is practiced immediately after giving training in two skills, and after the third skill is practiced, another integrating lesson is practiced. This process of integrating each sub skill to the whole lesson goes on at the end of the practice of each sub skill. The second pattern is after practicing three skills separately, the trainee may combines all the skills 1 plus 2 plus 3. First skill, second skill, third skill you are going to combine in a single lesson. Later, the trainee students the practice other three skills, means fourth skill, fifth skill and sixth skill, then combines all the six skills first, second, third, fourth, fifth and sixth in a single lesson. There is yet another pattern with clusters of five skills advocated by George Culling. So here the trainees learns the five skills separately and then all the skills are combined together in a longer lesson. Similarly, another set of five skills are learned separately and combined later. Whatever may be the pattern, a trainee should try out the method best suited to his or her. Next, advantages of micro teaching. Let us now look at a few advantages which make the educationist advocate micro teaching as a preferential experience before teaching a full period for the whole class. In that first one, it enables the student teacher concentrate on one teaching skill at a time. Because you are going to practice one skill, then automatically your concentration is only on one skill. Next, second one, it empowers the student teacher to monitor her own performance. Because here as a trainee teacher, you can able to monitor your own performance by taking the support of peer group, by taking the support of supervisor, by taking the support of self appraisal devices. As a trainee teacher, he or she can able to monitor own performance. Next, third one, it sensitizes the student teacher to become more self aware and self confident through critic sessions. Already you know that in micro teaching, critic session will be there. In critic session, it is nothing but feedback session. In this critic session and feedback session, you are going to a trainee teacher is going to get feedback from observers, means that peer group, supervisor, means that lecturer, and self appraisal devices, means that by using mobile phone, tape record, radio, etc. etc. Next, it facilitates the student teacher to be more scientific in her approach to teaching as the teaching behavior is meticulously planned. So here student teacher is going to understand teaching learning process is going to take place in a systematic manner. For the purpose of systematic teaching learning, what is going to play an important role? Planning is going to play an important role. Methods are going to play an important role. Strategies are going to play an important role. Teaching is going to play an important role. Teaching learning methods are going to play an important role. Period plan is going to play an important role. Different devices are going to play an important role. See, these all things are going to be understood by the trainee teacher if trainee teacher is going to do the practice of each and every micro teaching skill in separate manner. Now we will discuss about limitations of micro teaching. What are the limitations of micro teaching? With all the advantages mentioned above, micro teaching still cannot be considered a panacea for all evils. Panacea means it is not a solution to all problems of teaching learning process. Means that micro teaching is not going to give the solution to the each and every problem of teaching learning process. So this is the meaning of panacea. It has certain limitations. It cannot be substitute for macro teaching. In place of macro teaching, you are not going to use a micro teaching, and it is not a substitute. There may be certain problems like space, furniture, and some administrative hurdles. Hurdles means problems. Hurdles means speed breakers. Training of supervision may also be difficult. And micro teaching is an artificial procedure. It is not a real procedure, it is an artificial procedure. And next one, it causes psychological strain for the student teacher who has to perform in the presence of her fellow students. The main problem in micro teaching is trainee student has to perform in front of his friends only, in front of his fellow students, in front of his peer group. So that's why it is going to give some strain to the trainee students. Next, it is not desirable to analyze the teaching process because it is always common sense that works in any given situation of teaching and learning. In teaching learning process, what is going to play an important role? Common sense is going to play an important role. So that's why, so this micro teaching is not a desirable teaching process. Common sense means depending upon your common sense, you are going to teach effectively in the classroom. When you don't have a common sense how to teach inside the classroom, then there is no use of the micro teaching. So there is obviously still a lot of work to be done to establish the supremacy of the technique of micro teaching. Its flexibility makes has filled the gap between the theory and practice of teaching methodology. Besides, it involves the development of the student teacher's self-concept. Hence, it seems to be one of the important components of teacher training. That's why every teacher trainee has to do the practice of micro teaching skills in separate manner. Then only each and every trainee teacher is going to become a great teacher. So this is about micro teaching. Thank you.